I know there's one person in particular, Joanne, Mary Vane, who wanted to be here and couldn't, and so is looking forward to seeing the recording. So I am so glad to have you all from DNS here to learn about your environmental justice work. I really am really excited about it. And you know, DNS and Westminster worked together for a number of years. Westminster helped DNS build a habitat house for Katrina. DNS had our youth there for their week of service a few years ago. And Joanne, who I'll introduce in just a second, worked with Mary Vane for when Mary was the fundraising chair at DNS. So close for years. Joanne McGeoch is the interim executive director, at DNS, where she's worked for over 6 years. Before that, she had a career in nonprofit fundraising for organizations mostly focused on environmental issues. And Marissa McClenton is DNS's environmental advocate. She's a full-time student at UD and has been working at DNS for a year or so on the Clean Water campaign. Thank you on behalf of all of us. She's passionate about environmental justice and is a terrific writer and has published several articles. And third, DNS's development manager, Marie Graham, is here and will help to monitor the chat for questions. So again, thank you so much, and I'll turn things over to you, Joanne.
Terrific. And is there a way I can share my screen now, right? I think you have to enable.
Sue is the master of that.
Great.
That should do it.
Yeah.
Marie, you're muted, Marie.
All right. Can you see my PowerPoint? Terrific. I'm going to just do a super quick high-level overview of DNS. I know you gave us a great introduction, but the organization is committed to environmental initiatives, has been working statewide since 1964. So we have had our hands in lots of policy decisions that have affected the state for many, many years, including the Coastal Zone Act was probably one of the most significant such issues. Delaware Nature Society has a three-pronged mission, which is one of the ways that we work in the community. So that's through education, conservation, and advocacy. The program we're sharing today falls on the education lens, but they pepper every area. So there's lots of conservation components woven throughout the program, and of course, advocacy. So activism is a big emphasis for these children and youth, young adults that we engage. So as you may know, we have 4 sites statewide. We have the Ashland Nature Center, which is in Hockessin, Coverdale Farm Preserve, which is in Greenville, DuPont Environmental Education Center, which is the hub for this Renew program. And then we have a site down in Southern Delaware in Milford called Abbott's Mill Nature Center. And that's a partnership with the Historic and Cultural Affairs and Fish and Wildlife. All of our sites kind of act as a way in which we engage participants in programs and activities that inspire connections to the environment and engagement to inspire action. So Renew is really just that. The acronym stands for Reaching and Engaging Through Nature to Empower Wilmington. The premise of this program really happened organically. We have been operating the site at DuPont Environmental Education Center since the center opened in 2009. It was a really great legacy project with Russ Peterson, former governor, who was a conservationist and a tremendous advocate for the development and redevelopment of the riverfront area. And Delaware Nature Society was selected as the organization to manage and oversee that nature center. So when the building was built, we were chosen to partner really with the Riverfront Development Corporation, and that partnership still stands today. So we're part of the anchor in the community in that riverfront development projects that's been happening for more than well over a decade. The Renew program really works on this model of engagement, which is just a triangulation. Essentially, you start broad in the community, people get involved. This is not dissimilar to a fundraising ladder of engagement where you get them in the door, you get them more involved. For us in particular, we're working with different education opportunities through all ages. So it starts with a preschool program and goes all the way up through teens, young adults, in high school. And the goal is to get them further and deeper connected. So the ultimate is that these students go through a layer of program opportunities with us and stay with us or join other organizations, but really deepen their education and awareness and connection to the environment so that they're poised to take action. Whether they become professionally involved in the environment or STEM careers would be an ultimate goal too. But that's not always the way that it ends up. They could just become activists and take many career paths. So all of those are part of the trajectory of this program. First, we talk about career exploration and job experience as being an important component. So here's some photos, an example. We do several programs that involve young adults, particularly teens or preteens. Two programs that in particular is the Green Jobs program. That's a long-standing partnership with the City of Wilmington and a couple of other nonprofit organizations. And then the Wilmington Youth Environmental Corps. This program here that you see, we're taking some students on a field studies trip to a water treatment facility. So it's a way to expose them to jobs that are STEM focused and that also have a lens in conservation or educate and restoration. New and expanded habitats. I mean, it sounds simple, but really it's important and vital. So connecting to the outdoors and creating opportunities to feel empowered by engaging in fun activities that get them out in nature. And here's some examples of taking some teens or young adults on bicycles. So we have access to that incredible Jack Markell Trail that runs right through the riverfront area, and we do have bicycles available for youth that want to get out and explore. And then, you know, testing the limits a little. So there's times that we'll take youth on excursions, whether it's at local parks or to areas outside of our centers to do activities. And here's one showing a young adult there learning the ropes to rock climbing. Community service is also a component. So we like to encompass education is also part of a way to give back into the community. So here's some students that are engaging with us through Green Jobs and Summer Marsh experience. Summer Marsh is a week-long immersion where the students from Delaware Futures come and camp overnight at Ashland, and then they have a week-long adventure with us at Deek and other locations. And in one instance, those students decided to help build some community gardens. And here in the picture on the right, there's a young man that's pulling out invasives from our marsh, which can be really hot work because it can get pretty muggy in the summer months, and helping them identify what an invasive plant is and why it's important as part of restoration to know what plants to keep and what ones to pull out. Civic engagement, which we'll talk about more later with Marissa and how that connects to our advocacy work. So raising the next generation of activists and conservationists is part of the goal of Renew and the programs that we provide. So it starts with a basic learning and understanding of civics and how bills get passed, how to use your voice to engage your legislators, your local delegation, to support initiatives in your community that you need to see happen. So using your voice, showing them how the process is many steps and takes many ways of engaging your legislators and your community in raising awareness of needs that you have. And here's a photo of one of our old staff members, Brenna Goggin, who was really passionate about this program, our director of advocacy, meeting with some of the students and talking about this civic engagement component. Community group programs really corresponds with some of the community organizations that we partner with. So the premise of Renew is not just to get them to the site at Deek, although it's a really beautiful location to get them out into nature, but it's also meeting children where they are. So a lot of times that's community centers, places where they congregate for after school programs, or out on the trail or festivals. And these examples that are shown here is Neighborhood House is one of our partners in Southbridge. So meeting with some students after school and after school programs there. And the young lady on the right is holding one of our turtles. So we do take kind of a little mini wet lab out where we'll take some animals when we do some tabling events or some public events in the community. And it's a great way to connect them to nature and wildlife if they don't have a chance to see them in their natural habitat. More after school nature clubs that we've also done through Renew that are anchored at community centers include Kingswood. So you mentioned Logan earlier. We have been working with Kingswood for the last few years in different programs, including the after school clubs, and they also have a preschool program. Even during COVID, we were able to do some preschool series online virtually with the kids, which is a lot of fun. Most of that was storytelling, connecting a book about nature or an animal or insect, and inspiring a dialogue with the young preschoolers there. The picture on your left is actually a really interesting story. So a lot of times when we're talking about engaging young people in urban areas with first-time nature experiences, it's also getting them comfortable with being in situations where maybe they haven't done before. So canoeing, before we take them out in a canoe in the tidal river, that's the Christina, which can be a little choppy and challenging to navigate even for someone who knows how to work and paddle in a canoe. We try to do these programs first indoors in a safe environment. So here's an example of taking some of the youth in these programs in the after school clubs in a canoe trial in the pool. So that's actually at Fletcher Brown Boys and Girls Club. So a chance to get the kids from the Boys and Girls Club into the pool first in a canoe before we take them out on the water. And you're using all the same skills. It just, it feels a little safer for the first time in, getting their feet wet, so to speak. And then the kids on the right, was a after school program at Kingswood where we built a community garden, and you can't really fully see it, but there's some soil here that they're digging out of a wheelbarrow to put into the new garden. There's a component of the program that also involves some summer internships. So these are paid internships. So we do two kind of tiers. There's one that runs annually, and this is supported by an individual donor that has established an internship scholarship fund, essentially to fund a summer intern at Deek every year, which is wonderful. In the last few years, we've also partnered with this collective impact initiative called the Alliance for Watershed Education. The acronym for that is AWE, the AWE network. And it's 23 centers that are based around the Delaware River watershed. So it stands up as far north as the Poconos and New Jersey, all the way down to Camden and Wilmington, Delaware. So we sit at the lowest point. Our center is actually the lowest of the 23 centers if you're looking at a map on the watershed. And through that program, we have gotten funding and support to hire a watershed fellow. So this is an intern in the summer that's specifically focused on watershed studies and watershed education. And the great thing about this network is it really highlights that the Delaware River watershed is an essential watershed that supports clean water for 15 million people. It's a pretty remarkable thing when you think about it. So watershed studies encompasses connecting people just to the waterways and understanding how important they are to protect and what a vital resource it is for the community, from economic development to tourism to recreation, all of the things that the watershed supports, and of course jobs. Can't forget those. This is like I said, it's a collective impact initiative. So we're one of these 23 centers, and these fellows work together. It's actually really neat. So they get to meet with some other interns that are based at other nature centers throughout the collective network. So Bartram's Gardens in that community, the Camden Aquarium is on that in that community, and there's a Pocono Nature Center. There's a Watershed Institute in New Jersey. So it's a great network too for those young people to connect with each other and learn from each other as they're doing their summer internship. Summer Marsh Experience is a week-long, and I had mentioned it earlier, it's a week-long immersion program, and this has been long-standing. We've been working with Delaware Futures for probably more than a decade, I want to say. They're a really great program partner for us, and so this week-long immersion happens at Deke. They camp at Ashland, and they stay in our lodge. A lot of times they'll do field trips. We'll take them to the students to Longwood, or different areas that offer some enrichment opportunities, but they always do a project too. And it's really great to see the kids in action. So at the end of the week, they do a presentation that they work on together. And, you know, on the right, you see some students who actually built something that they put in the water so they can track and see things from underground and in the water. And it was, you know, a robotic program that the students came up with, built, and did a presentation on. Other presentations could be about habitat studies in the marsh. It's always neat to see what types of programs that they choose to highlight from their experiences. And that program has been largely underwritten by DuPont Corporation, has a long-standing partnership. Green Jobs. This is another collaborative program that we do in the summer. So this is really run through the city of Wilmington. We're one of the host sites, DNS, through our DuPont Environmental Education Center, the Nature Conservancy, of course, of Delaware, Delaware Center for Horticulture, University of Delaware's Water Resources Center, Stroud. There's lots of partners. And this summer we hosted 10 students from Del Castle Technical High School, Mount Pleasant, AI DuPont, Wilmington Charter, in this immersive study. It's 6 weeks, and it's a great kind of sampling of all types of jobs that they can do in environmental studies fields in STEM. A lot of it is hands-on, but it's also recreation. So you see some kids out on canoes, on the water, exploring nature, here in the marsh, doing some restoration cleanup there on the left. Probably one of more interesting programs that we've launched. This is really recent. This is just within the last year or two. We've only actually done 2 years of this program in succession. A little interruption with COVID last year, but we did do this virtually as well. It's called the Wilmington Youth Environmental Corps. So we partnered with the Hicks Anderson Community Center, which is not far from Deke, and we host 14 high school teens per semester. So it breaks that out to 2 groups per year during the school year. They meet for 9 sessions. There's always a field trip component and a work study or research project. The neat thing about this program is we do invite guest speakers. So we've had some great partnerships from Comores, scientists that have come out that wanted to partner and teach the children about some of the programs or the types of careers that they work in STEM, and DuPont, or industry partners like water treatment facility or waste management. So it's an opportunity for them to see a pretty wide gamut. This program launched in 2019, and we did 2 semesters in person. In the middle of 2020, we had to move to remote. So last fall's 2020 program was entirely online. And I have to say, I commend the students that were in the program because they really stuck through it. It's hard to be a kid online all day for school. And then this club, which happens after school, late after school, usually after 5, to maintain your attention and be part and an active participant. You know, they really did work hard. And there is a stipend at the end of this program. It's part of, they can use that money to put towards college applications or just things that they want to advance for themselves. It's a great opportunity though to get them involved and learn more about careers in STEM. And then the last program we're going to cover is the Trail Ambassadors. This is also a new program. We launched it in 2020. This actually was a really neat idea. Kind of the genesis of this was finding ways to keep the kids moving in the top of the pyramid that I showed earlier. So this is really focused on young adults. So we're talking high schoolers who are preparing for college. And we call them trail ambassadors or TAs. They learn how to be roaming naturalists. So what that encompasses is learning all great things about the outdoors, how to interpret nature, and share those interpretations with the people that they meet along the trail. So there's an incredible network of trail systems right around the riverfront. Not just the Jack Markell Trail that of course runs through Newcastle, but also the Riverfront Walk or the River Walk. And we just have the opportunity to extend the South Bridge through the new bridge that was just completed last fall. So it's a pedestrian, bike, and car friendly bridge that connects the Wilmington on the riverfront side to South Wilmington, which is where we're also doing some work along the new wetland park there. So these are the first cohorts. They were kind of the guinea pigs of the project, or so to speak. They were the very first to go through the program. And these are 4 young people who were really inspiring that completed their service in June of this year. So they started last year and just completed in June. And here's another picture of Anya, Cornelius, Weston, and Corin. This group of individuals, some of the things that they would work on were to really connect people to the Christina River and the Delaware River watershed, which the emphasis is, connecting them to the waterways that runs right through the city, to attend trainings. Sometimes they meet with community leaders or business leaders and learn personal and professional skills, just public speaking or how to engage and connect with people for the first time that you haven't met before. They also conduct pop-up nature education experiences for people that are roaming the trail. That picture before that I showed you, there was a little nature mobile, which they would use frequently. Here it is. It's a bicycle with a little mobile pop-up nature kind of cart. So there's all sorts of things they can put in that cart, from sketches that they can do about habitats or wildlife that they see along the trail, to little mini wet labs, so things that the public can do to engage in nature. They also participate in programs, so they teach the younger kids that come to DEEC, whether they're coming through a field studies program or summer camp. We try to get them out and engaging with as many people and diversity of audiences as possible. And then attend civic association meetings, and represent their community using their voice. This is a great segue too, because we are going to move more now to the component of our presentation that Marissa is going to share with you all in environmental justice. So all of this really connects. It's not just teaching young people about the environment, but how to activate and use their voice to propel action that they want to see in their community. So Marissa, I invite you to take it away.
Yeah, so I think it's perfect that this is how we transition, because I got involved with Delaware Nature Society because I was invited to speak with the Wilmington Youth Environmental Corps and the Green Jobs program. So that's just such a great segue into what we're going to talk about. So environmental justice. Last summer, Del Nature kind of made the collective decision to proactively support and kind of prioritize advocacy initiatives that not focused on, but that included environmental justice stuff that related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, just so that our actions could kind of align more with our values as an organization, and we could just be more efficient with what we were doing. So a couple of things that we've done, possibly the biggest thing that I've done since being with the Clean Water Campaign is House Bill 200, the Clean Water for Delaware Act. So amongst all the other things, basically the bill just provides clean water for the state and gives us ways to do that and gives us funding so we can do these projects. So my favorite part of the bill itself is that it requires EJ community members or representatives to be on this Water Infrastructure Advisory Council, who kind of makes decisions on how money is going to be spent, what it's going to be spent on. It creates an annual strategic plan for how it will be spent, like I said above, and it focuses on affordability and accessibility for our most vulnerable communities, which is huge for environmental justice, because a lot of times something that we see is we have plans, but are they accessible to people that need them the most? And so one of the ways this does this is in low interest loans, which we love, but one of the things that we are fighting for as Del Nature is for more grants. Because obviously if you're a little tight for money, you would prefer a grant than a loan. And so that's one of the things that we're going to continue to push for as we go through the strategic planning process. And then lastly, it allows the public to testify and participate in the planning process. So the big definition of environmental justice, one of the main things that sticks out is meaningful involvement. And that's what this gets at. Like, the community members need to have an opportunity to engage and have a say in what projects are being funded, what's being done, and who it's being done for. And so this ability to testify publicly gives the community that direct involvement and that direct say in the clean water around them and how they get that. So we do a lot of like communication of EJ priority. This is where a lot of my work comes in. So we have blogs that come out every week, and they're all focused on different DEIJ, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice things. So I've written them on a wide array of topics. Done some on intersectionality. I did one that was actually featured in the newspaper yesterday about the historic link between the Black experience and environmental justice. We've done some, I'm working on one on heat right now. Just all these, just trying to get people to understand EJ and how it affects their lives. And so we also engage with a relatively new coalition, Delaware Environmental Accountability Coalition. And so one of the main things that we're trying to do is to pass a piece of legislation that would address cumulative impacts, it's a big word, impacts in mainly northern Delaware, but the whole state. And so just a little bit into that legislation.
See all those things that they say, they have those things that.
Okay. If you are in a neighborhood and you have like one polluting facility, it's gonna hurt. But if you have 2 or 3 that are all around you, those are going to add up, and you're gonna have a cumulative impact on your health, on your safety, on your well-being. And so this bill kind of gets at who can be placed in a community that already has several facilities, and gives us a little bit more control as a state into allowing certain facilities to be in places and kind of preventing them from being in already overburdened communities. So we're doing that work right now. It's one of my favorite things that I've been doing on EJ, environmental nature. And I know I left one thing off here, but I will add one more thing. We do advocacy classes. And so we have added an advocacy class that gets at environmental justice. So actually one of my old professors, old's the wrong word, I had a class in my sophomore year, I'm now a senior. He's actually teaching the class for us. And so he just goes into a little bit of the history of environmental justice and just kind of teaches people that are interested about what they can do, what's the history, and just how it fits into our daily lives. So that is a lot of our EJ stuff.
Thank you so much, Marissa. This last slide is just a great closing photo. Shows some of the students from the Wilmington Youth Environmental Corps who had a special visit from a Comores scientist on one of the field studies program that they did. And it's a really great opportunity too to connect with volunteers in the community that are passionate about education and want to share their experience with these youth. We definitely welcome that. Mentoring or setting up opportunities to connect professionals with these young people is also really important to us. So, we definitely welcome, partnerships if there are individuals that are interested in working with us in that regard. And I should just say one last note that as Marissa was talking about environmental justice, it's important to recognize that Delaware Nature Society is working on our own internal kind of diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion evaluation. As a long-standing environmental nonprofit, we've recognized there's a lot of learning we have yet to do. And it's really wonderful to see young people leading the way in advocacy and how we can all do better and engage all people in equity as it pertains to environmental issues that affect all of us. So this has been a really powerful year for us to spend some time and work on these issues and work with our community to address things that are important to all of us, from clean water to the cumulative impacts bill, which is right now being worked on. It's really inspiring work. So we welcome any questions that you have or anything you'd like to talk about.
First, I would like to say this is so impressive and very exciting work that you're doing. I'm so glad to hear, and it's so extensive.
Oh, thank you. It's been really wonderful. And we have a really dedicated team. I wish John was here. John Herod, who's our site director, who really has been the vision behind the Renew program. And he has a great team on the ground too, that he works with to execute the programs as well.
With all that activity, you must be operating year round with students and youth.
We do operate year round, and there's a couple of groups I realize now that I left out of the slideshow. One new partner we've worked with in the last year, really new, because they just moved their campus to Wilmington, is Serbian, which is an all-girls school that just moved to downtown Wilmington. So we've been able to plug into their 5th and 6th grade curriculum with some of our science education programs. And then it's great to get the kids outside. So take them on a bicycle ride. They did a neat program where they learned how to, be basically a bicycle tech, how to do basic repair on your bicycle. So if you ever get a flat, or if you can assist someone in the community that had, their gear came off, how to remedy that. So it was a part STEM learning and part fun. We always try to make the programs fun. I mean, that's really the key. But yes, we do work year round. This year has been challenging for all nonprofits and churches alike, not being able to gather people in person and learning new ways to engage our constituents online has it's been challenging, but we've been able to keep it going, which has been great. So we're grateful for that.
I noticed one of your slides that one of your partners was the Delaware Center for Horticulture, and I'm kind of guessing that they're more in the planting side, and you are on the engagement and interaction side. Is that right?
It's a great observation. So DCH has long-standing work in the community in greening projects, tree planting. It's funny because a lot of times when we're working with community partners, one of the things they ask us is, can you help us with our gardens? As tempting as it is for us to, want to get in and help them, that really is where DCH is invaluable as a partner. And that really is where they plug in and serve. They also have great programs too, but that's where it's a great partnership for us, because we really layer in the education where they're more hands-on in the greening field, which, it would be great if we could do more of, but right now it's mostly in the education realm, and advocacy keeps us busy.
So, Jean, right? Do churches often have youth groups who are engaged in some of these projects as a church youth group?
I would love to see more of that. I think it's an excellent idea. So we're always looking for places to meet and connect with already existing captive audiences.
Right.
So if you have an engaged teen program or youth program, let's connect. We do work with some partners on it's called the Yes Summit. So it happens, I think, in February, usually of each year. It's a youth environmental summit. D. Durham's part of it. There's a bunch of really great leaders, but we're always a presenter or a speaker in some capacity. But we also have resources like that we can plug youth into. It's a way to also get them involved in planning activism, which that summit does.
Or just participating and helping to make the community better. I have talked with rowers who do, and teen rowers who row on the Christina River, and are quite disillusioned with the river and the water quality. They'd rather be in the Schuylkill. Now, Chris can speak to this because she's a rower, but the kids that I've talked to just last week said that they would prefer to be in the Schuylkill, and I'm like, what? What's happening? What is your vision or your thought about the Christina?
Oh, it's such a good point. I actually am really excited. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have Senator Tom Carper out to Deke on August 20th to commemorate a really awesome grant that was just awarded to American Rivers to help clean up the Christina River. So
Yeah.
just keep in mind, like, obviously we're talking legacy issues, things that have happened.
The Christina, if I can interject, the Christina
Yeah.
is tidal.
Yes.
The Christina has scum and junk and stuff in it, but it is so much cleaner than it used to be.
Mhm.
And last spring I was rowing, and there was, there's a springtime mayfly
Mm.
thing that happens. I was in the middle of it, and it was so exciting to see these mayflies just everywhere, which is a sign that the
That's a good
river
sign.
is healthy.
Yeah.
So if these kids don't like scum, go to the Schuylkill if they can get there, by all means. But
It's a
I'm
great
sorry.
point. No, it's a great point. It's a tidal river, and that's what the marsh also helps to do. So part of the South Wilmington Planning Network is working on a plan for the Southbridge community to do a marsh restoration, much like what's happened at the riverfront. Because
When you're rowing, you're not supposed to fall in the river. So just leave it that way, and you got to wash your boat.
right.
And I know who you're talking about, Susan, so I think.
I will add that, so I work more directly with the Clean Water Campaign that Donature is part of. And so one of the things that we do have is called Water Warriors. And those are our supporters who are really just excited about water in the state and securing clean water. And so we're always welcome to having more. One of the things that I try and do is to engage more with predominantly college students, but just like youth in general. And so you're more than welcome to pass on my contact information, and we can get together and see how we can just utilize those youth voices and get that heard in like these water projects I was talking about earlier. It's a really good way to get them used to seeing a problem, realizing they have power, and then being a part of the change that they had in mind when they first brought it up.
Yeah. Awesome.
Other questions?
You mentioned Delaware Futures and some activities with Southbridge and some other areas. I'm curious how you determine kind of what student groups or what neighborhood groups you work with. How do those decisions get made?
That's a really great question. Delaware Futures, we did some programs with at other sites, which is how we kind of started with them. Coverdale Farm, for many years, we did a great program about healthy eating and healthy living. I think I don't want to say it's harder to navigate with public schools, but sometimes when you have private schools or charter schools, you can make a commitment that's a little bit easier to navigate. We certainly would love to do more engagement with schools in general. I think it's just hard right now to make those commitments because a lot of the schools aren't meeting in person, but Delaware Futures is one that we've had a long-standing partnership. Servium was new because by location, they were moving downtown. So John reached out to them. We have done some programs with them at Ashland in prior years. And because they were making their move, he just introduced the opportunity for us to work together. It's actually kind of fun to play. I look at fundraising as playing a matchmaker a little bit because it's an opportunity to share a program and share the vision and goal of a funder to connect that program with the resources they need to happen. So all these programs are underwritten. So sometimes it's a matter of who we're able to have funding to sustain being able to serve. And I'd love to see more. I think there's opportunities really to grow. I think in particular, you mentioned Logan earlier with the Teen Warehouse. We have met with them. They're kind of unique, and I think he's got a really smart way to do it in that he's letting the teens there lead what projects they want to do. So, we vetted them, we showed them kind of what our portfolio of programs were, and they didn't select us the first time around, and that's okay. I mean, it really is important for, I think, the youth to select what types of activities that they want to do, and that's what he's doing at the warehouse. So we'd love to keep talking with him just to find out.
Well, and really for the Teen Warehouse, until just about now, they really haven't been able to do anything to speak of in person. They're considered a class 2 or class 2 drop-in. facility that until the governor lifted the state of emergency, they were prevented really, for the most part, from meeting in person at all.
Yeah.
And so now that that's opened up, I'm sure there's a host of initiatives and possibilities in front of them, but certainly it's more likely now that they would be able to do something perhaps than it was, 6 or 8 or 12 months ago.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
Except that now with this new Delta variant, we're going back a little bit. So we have a double whammy here right now. We find that at church as well with our youth programs at church. This now new alert and anxiety related to this new variety of virus. So it's a challenge.
A challenge it is. It hasn't changed the rules yet, but it might very well. And so it's requires an incredible degree of flexibility on everybody's part. But thank goodness for, things like Zoom and some of the technologies that let us connect people without being physically together.
And we can still plan to be ready. So we're ready for when things open up. Then we've got the plans in place. So that's the important thing, isn't it?
Right. And then you just know when to do it. Yeah, you're all good to go.
You know what you want to do. You just have to have the clearance to go ahead.
So it sounds like you all work with children, little ones, up through college.
Yeah. It's a pretty broad span of age, I realize, which, requires obviously lots of flexibility. The preschool series that we were doing with Kingswood really was by default. They were thrilled to have us be able to do a program on Zoom with their preschoolers because they were looking for things to do. So it was an opportunity for us to develop, a read aloud program around nature books. So it was a lot of fun. We do cover a pretty broad range. I think for more STEM focused or job ready programs, that's largely teens. And that's been an emphasis for us.
Well, next week, our speakers are from Kingswood Community Center, so they may end up talking about their partnership with you.
Oh, awesome.
Chris, do you have a question? You're muted. Chris, you're muted.
Yep, she's getting it,
Okay.
I think.
Mute my audio.
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go.
Marissa, you mentioned the professor or the scientist from Chemours coming and talking to the kids, and I thought you used the words defining environmental justice and programs. Is that because I think that's a concept that we kind of throw out, but I'm wondering, Sue, for a broader group down the road at church, when we can ever get back, maybe that would be an interesting topic to just talk about what environmental justice means and how it can relate to different aspects of the community.
So the Chemours scientist is something that Joanne actually touched on. The professor I was talking about, Professor Jeffrey Richardson, he has his roots in community organizing. He did a lot of stuff out in LA. He does a lot of stuff in Wilmington. And yeah, just like you said, it's a really good way to get in. Even when I talk to youth, the first thing I do is, what do you think environmental justice is? And usually they're like, I don't know, like I know what justice is, I know what the environment is, but that intersection of the environment and justice is a whole different thing. And so a lot of times when I teach it, and from what Professor Richardson taught me, is that you go in and you see the environment and you see justice, and then you realize that EJ is connected to everything, like from roads to water to air to which car you drive, how much money, like it's all EJ stuff. So it's definitely a really good, just like a way to get people to see the environment around them. Like something as simple as look at which neighborhoods have trees, which ones don't, like that's environmental justice. So yeah, would definitely support y'all having it as a class. I think it's a great idea.
We've made reference to it in any number of classes that we've had, but we've not had one on that per se. For example, we did one on the interstate highway system. And
that's one of the things
that has, and pointed out that was a huge environmental justice issue, because the decisions about the routing of the
Mhm.
roads, not just in Wilmington, but across the country.
Right.
And the consequences for air quality and all sorts of other aspects of quality of life. And it's a real injustice issue. And the decisions that were made were predicated largely on that being not just okay, but the preferred option, sadly. So one of the, there's a program going on tonight, actually, I'm trying to think who did the I-95 program a couple of weeks ago, but there's a follow-up.
The Historical Society.
Thank you, thank you. So they're having a follow-up tonight from 6 to 8. That's why Marlis isn't here.
Yeah, I
And
watched
it's
it. I watched it a
panel-
couple weeks ago.
A panel discussion tonight.
Is it
of,
recorded by chance?
I hope so. I've asked Marlis to find out if
Nice.
it is. I know the one last time, 2 weeks ago, was recorded. And I'm
Good.
hoping that the one is tonight as well. Lisa Blunt Rochester is on the panel.
Awesome.
I forget who some of the other panelists are, but the question is, so what do we do about this?
Mhm.
And of course, there is a project that's been recommended that would create some parks that would help span some of the overpasses over the interstate and restore some green space and help air quality and just the atmosphere or environment in general. And I think there are a lot of people, our group included, who would love to put some advocacy and support behind those kinds of actions that sort of
Yeah.
merge the environmental opportunities with with a chance to redress in a small way some of the terrible injustice that was done when the interstate was built.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chris, I think there could be a discussion or a class on the broad meaning of and implications of environmental justice, because you're right, Marissa, almost everywhere you look in that regard, it ties those pieces together because of the way that people are impacted by the decisions that are made.
So, you have an idea, I'm sure, Joanne or Marissa, how many students or children are in your programs a year?
In a typical year,
Yes, typical year.
in a typical year, we see upwards of 30,000 students in a year. Of the Renew program, it's much smaller, but it's a deeper program. So their repeat visitation, we look at that at more in the range of about 200 youth. And we do, I should mention, as an organization, we also do a lot of scholarships for schools. So anyone in a Title I school, or if there's a field trip program that charter or private or public school wants to attend and they need support to underwrite the field studies, we do have scholarship funding available and a really important endowment that supports that initiative, which is fabulous. But typical year numbers are very high. Last year, not so much. I mean, we really tried to do a lot of adaptive learning online and offered a lot of series of programs and flexibility, even some drop-in opportunities for parents that were working to bring their kids to our nature centers for a kind of green time after screen time. But the pandemic was just very unpredictable. So not nearly as many students this last year, although Renew was probably one of the mainstay programs in some capacity because we had commitments from those community centers to meet with the youth. So that was important to keep moving.
Well, as Susan said, in keeping the pandemic in mind and what the evolving situation looks like and who knows, but having in place some plans for the point at which things improve, they will. We don't know when that's going to be. But we're always, Susan has been extraordinarily involved for as long as I've known her in programs for youth and children, and they're very much grounded in faith and spiritual journeys and learnings, but also putting that faith and that learning to use out in the world. And the other thing that we have been very anxious to do for a long time, and again, the pandemic interrupted it, are ways of engaging families in activities of acting out their faith and honoring those commitments as family units. A lot of our parents have asked for those sorts of things. How, you know, we had a program called Saturday Breakfast, and parents and their kids could go and make pancakes, you know, for people who were hungry and came in for breakfast. And the opportunity as a family unit to get involved in serving in whatever way is enormously valuable. So we would want to look for those sorts of opportunities in the future too.
Great, that's fabulous. We would love to do that.
Can I ask one more question about your team? Who do you hire people to design these programs, or are these volunteers who design the programs?
Yeah, a lot of it is led by the staff, and I will say we did it at DEEC. At least there were a couple of well, there was a staff member, Dakin Hewlett, who was fabulous, rose through the ranks, started as a watershed fellows with the Alliance, and then became a full-time employee. Just landed a great job as an environmental educator at a place up in Maine that she couldn't turn down. But boy, do we miss her, because she was really pretty innovative with youth development programs, because she had gone through the program herself. I mean, and Marissa spoke to that earlier. A lot of times it is just more meaningful too when it's coming from the youth themselves that help. But we, you know, always are open to working with volunteers if you want to get involved. Susan, I know that John would love to have more volunteers at the site at DuPont Environmental Education Center. We see a lot of people in the public too, just outside of Renew, just at that center. I think their visitation numbers are right around 40,000 people a year, because you have the trail right there. So they don't all come into the nature center. So we try to bring programs outside or pop-up things along the trail to engage families or walkers when they're going by. But once they come in and see what kind of things that we offer, you know, we free dip netting, they can take a naturalist hike, birding programs that are free. You know, there's lots of things to engage the public in. So we're always looking for volunteers and educators. So yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
If there aren't any more questions, I would like to extend huge thanks, Joanne, Marissa, and Marie, for being here tonight. And the work you do is just really fabulous. And I hope that we can stay engaged with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, and to my team for joining tonight.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I know people have already lined up to watch the video on our YouTube channel.
Oh, good.
So that will be great as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night.